there's been plenty of debate on housing issues in the past month, from budget to COS. And so, when do you think the housing issues, caused by the demand-supply imbalance will be solved? What more needs to be done besides ramping up supply, as you had outlined earlier?
Housing is an important part of our social compact. It is an important part of people's lives. It is by far and away the single largest investment that many people make. Investing in not just an asset, but most importantly as a home for themselves and for their families. And there has been a lot of discussion and debate about housing. And remember, a lot of it has got to do with the impact that COVID has brought to bear on the construction sector. As DPM Lawrence Wong had said during budget roundup, some 100 projects were delayed, more than 83,000 homeowners affected, maybe even more because of the new projects that were delayed too. And that was quite a huge impact. But today we have brought down the proportion of BTO projects affected by COVID delays from some 90% in 2021 to about 40% this year. And that is a result of us working very closely with the construction sector. It's last year 20,000 keys, this year on track another 20,000. By end of March, we would be able to hand over 8,000 homes completed. So that is significant progress, but the work is not yet done. It will take probably about another 2 years before we clear all the projects that have been delayed by COVID. And on top of that, continue the new build, the ramp up that we started in 2021 to build 100,000 flats between 2021 to 2025. Part of that included advancing shorter waiting time flats, but also advancing a lot of the BTO projects that were on track to be delivered later. But to deal with the current situation that we have in the property market, to cool the resale market, to bring down BTO application rates, we're seeing early signs of results. So, for example, the resale market, still early days yet, but we're beginning to see some possible plateauing of resale prices. Sellers seeing a little bit more price resistance. We see that on the resale side. We also see that on the rental side. We're starting to see BTO application rates moderate. So February's BTO application rates, starting from November, we started to see some moderation. February, it's continued. But we're starting to see application rates moderate. And February's application rates across the board were the lowest we've seen for quite some years, since 2020 February. Part of that involves assuring people that waiting times will begin to look like before COVID. The median waiting times last year, this year have been affected because they've been dragged down by COVID-delayed projects. But with the resumption of some normalcy, with shorter waiting time flats commencing again, we aim to bring down the waiting times and give people the assurance that they don't have to wait too long for their flats. So I think let's wait and see a few more quarters. Certainly 1 to 2 years' time, we will clear the backlog and bring back stability to the property market.
There have been, some concerns within the banking sector, especially with, the Silicon Valley Bank and then now concerns over Credit Suisse. Will there be repercussions on Singapore's property market?
Yes. You have seen already in many major jurisdictions around the world, property markets moving significantly to the downside. You see that in the US, Australia, New Zealand, Hong Kong, China, and many other places. Singapore market has been fairly resilient, in part because over the years we've been putting in cooling measures, macroprudential measures to prevent bubbles from forming. But nevertheless, we are very mindful of the macroeconomic conditions. And as you said before, we want to ensure a stable property market. and are putting in measures to cool the demand on the upside. At the same time, we must be careful not to overcorrect, because firstly, sentiment is volatile. Secondly, we are significantly ramping up supply, both on the BTO side as well as on the private property market side. In fact, for the first half of 2023, our GLS launch of about 4,100 units, or land that can accommodate 4,100 private property units, is the highest. It's the highest since, I believe, probably 2014 or 2013. I think I can check the date. And we're prepared to ramp up even further if necessary to meet genuine demand. Thirdly, we have had cooling measures in place, 2 rounds already during COVID. The last one in September last year, and they're still working their way through the market. Fourthly, of course, interest rates continue to go up. Of course, MAS has been very clear that Singapore's banking system is stable because of all the measures that they put in over the years. But we are not immune to shocks that reverberate from around the world. And financial shocks can be particularly severe, especially if they come from major markets. But the geopolitical climate is not benign either. You see the conflict in Russia and Ukraine continuing to persist. We have tensions between the 2 major superpowers, China and the US, and they also have very major trading partners as well. So all in 2023, a lot of uncertainty, and we start to see some caution in the property market as well. So I think we want to deal with a buoyant property market, but also mindful not to overcorrect. It is one thing to deal with a buoyant property market in an economy that's booming, but it's quite another to tackle a buoyant property market at a time where the outlook actually is far from benign and actually quite worrying. And so we want to make sure that we calibrate very carefully and keep a very close eye on the property market at this time.
Minister, so can you give an update on the Forward Singapore exercise? How has it been going so far, and what can we expect to see in this review? And any updates on the review of estate reclassification?
Home ownership continues to be continues to resonate very strongly with Singaporeans, though there continue to be a whole diverse range of views about housing options. Housing options at different stages in life, all right? Housing options in both the private and public market. And concerns not just about their own housing situation, but also housing for more vulnerable communities. And one very strong theme that came across was how to better target new housing supply in order to meet the needs, housing needs of people who have never bought a home before. They're buying their very first home. There were various ways that we could have done this, but we decided, okay, let's target young couples, 40 and below, and let's support families with younger children. And we decided to cut it off at 18 and below, in a way reflecting the current parenthood priority scheme that we have. And so we announced during Committee of Supply, right, extra support for a subgroup of first-timers. We call them parents and married couples. And then another point that came up over and over again was this issue of non-selection. People had heard about applicants who had the chance to book but didn't. To many Singaporeans, it is about whether our system meets the aspirations of Singaporeans, whether it allocates scarce resources fairly, equitably, and efficiently. And we decided that we needed to do something about that as well in response to Singaporeans' concerns. And amongst a whole range of ideas that they gave to us, we decided to settle on what we've announced, which is tightening the non-selection count, while at the same time providing a safety valve for those with genuine reasons not to select. We are at about the halfway mark of the work of the housing conversations under Forward Singapore. And as DPM said, later in the year, there will be a report, and we will be sharing more plans. We're still developing, processing many of the feedback that have been received. The first being this feedback from Singaporeans about estate classification. And it's very easy to stick to the status quo. I mean, it doesn't seem to some people to be broken, but actually to others and to us, I think we must give it a rethink. Don't just stick to these categorizations without recognizing how things have changed over the years. And at the heart of it is people's sense that sometimes estate classification does drive buyers' mindsets. It does impact pricing, but it also, to them, should reflect what they see as reality on the ground today versus many, many decades ago or years ago when it was first drawn up and first classified. Second, of course, is better support for seniors. We talked about a pipeline of community care apartments around Singapore that we're working on closely with MOH on. So the question is, looking forward, with 1 in 4 seniors aged 65 and above by 2030 onwards, what more do we need to do from the housing, health, social and medical perspective for seniors in the community? So there are a lot of ideas. And we must find some way in our report, in our communications, to reflect the sheer diversity of ideas, the richness of the ideas that have been shared with us by experts, by academics, by researchers, by people in the real estate sector, by community, by members of the community. I think all in, housing remains top of mind for Singaporeans. But we have something unique in Singapore, unique and precious. In housing the nation, this has become part of our psyche and part of our social compact. And whilst we keep addressing challenges that we face, fixing problems in the system, and improving our public housing system so that it remains relevant for Singaporeans today and tomorrow, we must and will continue to ensure that housing remains affordable and accessible.